Goalies, how's it going? Welcome back to the DIY Goalie podcast. Today it is Connor and myself again. We're doing a bit of a solo duet episode. So, what we wanted to touch on today, because we've touched on it at various points throughout the episodes that we've had, but we wanted to kind of put together, one full on kind of resource, I guess, and touch on how the average Joe goalie, whether that's beer league, whether that's minor hockey, whatever the case is, how they can maximize their development. So we're gonna go through a bunch of stuff, kind of similar to what we've done when it's been Connor and I before, just kind of some back and forth. Probably chirp each other a few times. Well, we think we're funny, even if you guys don't.
We're the knockoff Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. From
Knockoff Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, from Wish. Um, so, but before we get started, just wanted to touch on a few kind of housekeeping things. So, we have started to see, some slow and steady growth on the podcast. So, just wanted to kind of say, thanks to all you guys listening. We appreciate it. It helps us, continue to come back and make these episodes for you guys. But at the same token, if you guys enjoy what you're listening to, leave us a rating, hopefully 5 stars, a review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can give us a like or a subscribe on YouTube, or you can follow the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts too. Share it with a friend. That helps as well. The goalie community is pretty tight knit, and so we want to make sure that we're out in all the earbuds that we can be in the goalie community. Other ways too, if you guys want to support us, we do have our full goaltending breakdown course that you can kind of get a little bit of information on if you head to the diygoalie.com/courses. And also we've got merch too, goalie related merch that you guys can check out. There's some shirts, there's some hoodies, some long sleeves. Those are at the diygoalie.com/shop. So anything like that kind of helps support us, helps kind of keep the lights on and keep us coming back to keep making content for you guys. Anything to add before we get started, Connor?
Just thanks everybody for all the support. I'm still allowed to be on here, so I'm honored to be here. Just give us a like, subscribe, follow us on your podcast platforms and all that stuff. And it's gonna be a good one today. We got some good talking points, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, last thing too that I forgot to mention is if you guys still want to get those listener questions in, we've got those open at the diygoalie.com/podcast. Eventually, once we get enough, we'll put together kind of a listener Q&A episode. But we'll dive right into it. We won't take up any more of your time. But when it comes to being able to maximize development when we're talking about the average goalie, because unfortunately most of us don't really have access to a whole heck of a lot of ice time. We don't have access to a big supporting cast of staff members. We don't have the athletic therapists, we don't have the video coaches, all of that good stuff. So what can we do to get better? The first thing is, and it's very obvious, but if we can find more ice time, that's going to naturally translate into, becoming better. Just that exposure, that repetition, right? We've talked about it before, but they say it's 10,000 hours before you become an expert at something. So you got to just find the time as much as you can. Where can you do that? Well, depending on where you are in the world, the ODR, outdoor rink, that's an awesome way to go about it. I know growing up, we all loved the 2, 3, 4 hour evenings on the ODR, especially when it's only like -15 or something like that, and you're at the point that you're sweating through everything and your stuff's starting to freeze.
Yeah.
Um, Gotta love it. I mean, depends on what you have available around you and what the weather's like. But if you can get out on there, there's always guys that absolutely love having a tendy come out in the ODR, and
Yeah.
that might not necessarily be a good thing for us. I mean, but hey, it's like a normal practice. We're getting 4 shots at a time, and they're all to our heads. So um, there's also shinnies and public skates, depending again what you have available with the community rinks and what they've got as offerings. Um, one of the things that we've seen kind of come up lots is going out to a public skate and just working on some movements
Hmm.
without a stick, without pads. I mean, if your rink allows pads and gloves, great, that's awesome. But if not, find yourself a little corner. Hopefully, it's not too busy at the public skate, but just do some crease movement patterns. The X drill, the over and back, T pushes, shuffles. If you're not wearing pads, then slides and all that stuff probably aren't aren't too advisable. But do what you can with what you have. There's always something you can work on. Even if you get like goalie coaching knee pads or volleyball knee pads or flooring knee pads, anything like that, you can kind of get away with doing some slide work or some, T push recoveries or anything like that. Um, there's also obviously goalie sessions, like private goalie sessions, if you have those available around you. Even just regular camps or regular hockey sessions. I know a lot of times when, there's player development going on, they love just bringing out a goalie, usually no charge, just to come out and basically be a shooter tutor, which again, maybe not necessarily ideal, but it's still ice time. And as we heard from Ian Gordon back in episode 13 there, he had mentioned, you know, no, like embrace the opportunity of development, no excuses when you're out there, regardless of what the situation is. There's still you and there's still a puck. So make the most of that. And then the other thing too is if you can find a way to affiliate for a team, whether you're in minor hockey or whether you're a beer league, or just getting up to that next level, or subbing for another team that's at the same level in a different league, or whatever the case is, that's a good way to get some ice time. And some teams, especially if they only have one goalie, or maybe it's hard to find a goalie, they'll love having you out. And a lot of times too, like with goalies, depending on where you are, we can sometimes get ice time for free just because goalies are at such a premium. So look around, see what you have around you, but there's definitely opportunities to get more ice time if you can. And then you can kind of work on some of the stuff. We'll talk about some ways to kind of identify things to work on later on. But once you identify those things, you can hop out on that extra ice time and start getting better.
Well said. Done. Goodbye. See you later.
Yeah, episode
Uh,
over.
yeah. I think the one thing to note with that point, with just that bullet point in particular, is that it's not. What we're trying to drive at with it is that just work on the smaller details in things. Work on perfecting, for lack of a better term, like your C cut. Um, if you have some time on the ice, whether in like a public skate, focus on tracking down into your blocker, into your glove, into your chest. You have that little bit of spot there. Um, ODRs, obviously, like Nathan had said, great resource, great opportunity, especially if you live in the blithering cold of Canada. Um, Shinny, same deal. Um, yeah, public skates, goalie sessions. I mean, hey, we have our facility that's going to be coming up here fairly soon. I'm quite excited about that. And
Yeah.
then obviously, affiliation there as well. I might be in the uh, the 5% on this one, and I'm going to take this a little bit maybe of a step further here. Ball hockey, road hockey, obviously a different sport, obviously a different kind of how you do things, but the general principle is still the same. You're still working on your positioning. You're still working on your tracking and your ins and outs and all that. The only difference is that you're playing on concrete compared to playing on ice.
Yeah.
So
And
I would.
I'll jump in quick. I'll cut you off quickly.
All right,
Um,
it's a bad point. I know. I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say with ball hockey, because shout out to all our ball hockey goalie listeners out there. I know
Yeah.
there's at least a couple. Um, it is insane the difference trying to track a ball as opposed to trying to track a puck, especially the slap shots from the point, because those things curve and dip
Mm-hmm.
and it sucks. But the
Have
con,
I've played a couple of games as a goalie in ball hockey,
yeah,
and yeah, just trying to watch the thing is just it not impossible because that's not the word I want to use, but it's definitely a lot harder because the puck slices through the air much easier compared to the surface area of the ball, right? And there's an effect that it's called. I can't remember what it is, but back to my original point is that ball hockey again and or street hockey, if you're playing outside with your friends or with your brother or what have you, instead of sticking your younger brother in net like I used to do, stick them. You go in net. We work on positioning, work on tracking, and all that stuff. It's just the smaller things like that, and not every practice, so to speak, that you're out there working on your own ice time doesn't need to be these big extravagant drills. It's just sometimes the smaller things going back to basics um, that really will help you in the long run.
yeah,
Which moves on to the next point. I don't know if you had anything else at the ball hockey point. I did kind of cut you off here, but I
yeah.
had to set this up to knock it down. But all right.
No, it's all good. Well, I was just gonna say, like, that kind of builds off, and we might talk about this a little later too, but just that cross training, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing that a lot of the pro guys are talking about. Really help them is getting into different sports, getting into different positions, just getting into different situations that kind of build a skill set without really knowing it. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
because I played ball hockey, I played inline hockey, and I actually ended up,
Inline was another one. Yeah.
yeah, I ended up going to World Juniors, basically like the ISBHF World Juniors, played Team Canada, and both ball hockey and inline, I think, was a big player into why I was so athletic when I played. I didn't have much structure, but I could, make the backdoor split save, even though it probably would have been an easy push across. But hey,
Yeah.
that's a skill that I developed from those two, right? And probably why my joints are so bad these days as well. But that's another story. So
Yeah, it really, like, sports like those, like even you know baseball would be another one, and the tie into that would be is just it really you really compete for your space,
yeah,
right? So that's the big kicker there.
yeah. And Lundqvist was
Which,
big into tennis too when
yeah,
he
exactly
played.
right. So
Yeah,
it's
so
it's it's that agility there. So every time that you jump onto the ice for your own benefit, however you decide to do so, it's going to help for different things, obviously, right? So one time if you're on the ice at an ODR, okay, well that's going to kind of encompass everything to a certain extent. Shinny probably going to help with tracking because you're not going to have a lot of space to move out there depending on the type of time of day that you're going there. So it might just help more so just to work on your visualization, or otherwise if you are there kind of quieter throughout the day, okay, maybe you have a little more space to work on edge work, stuff like that. Goalie sessions again do kind of encompass everything. affiliation, you're probably focusing on one or two things at that point in time. And then again, with ball hockey, inline, street hockey, and by extension, baseball, you're working on your agility and as well as your positioning, tracking, and um, compete level, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term. So that's the so all those options will offer different aspects in how you can improve your development, improve your technicality when it transitions back into what you normally do on the ice on a regular basis.
Yeah. And that kind of takes us to like the next thing that we wanted to elaborate on was maximizing our practice time. Because the big thing is like when you get this extra ice time, there's not going to be a lot of structure to it. So you want to make sure that you have a bit of a plan. And at the end of the day, like Connor kind of touched on there, keeping it simple sometimes is the best way to go. And I know it's been well documented that that a lot of the pro guys, even though they're at the top of the leagues that you can get to, right? They're still doing simple X
Mm-hmm.
drills like simple crease patterns, T push out, stop, T push back, right? Out, drop, T push, recover back to the post, just stuff like that. Like a lot of what they do is super simple, super boiled down. It's kind of the old adage too with Kobe Bryant, how he'd go out and shoot, hundreds of free throws or just shots from wherever. Even though he's one of the best to play the game, he's still out there for
Mm-hmm.
a few hours before practice, just taking simple shots, simple free throws.
Being able to grab ice, however you do so, pick something that pick a goal that you have and work on it through that practice. Whether it's you want to work on your edges better, whether you want to work on catching a puck better, putting a puck into the corner off your blocker, off your stick, pad. Um, Pick a aspect of your game that you either are already good at and want to continue to improve at, or something that maybe needs a little bit more work.
Yeah.
Pick focus solely on that and work on that throughout the entire practice. If it's not, I would say personally, if it's not a goalie specifically structured practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Have a plan, have a goal.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Which I think by extension of that leads into our next point where we talk about the cognitive training. Um, when we had our episode with um, kind of Pete Fry as well as Sharky, um, cognitive training by extension of that is just another tool to help us improve our development, improve our game. You have um, options like concentration grips, visual edge, synaptic glasses, all those types of uh,
Exercises,
thank you
platforms,
exercises,
training.
platforms, however, all those different types of training that you can help bring back into your game. Even simple ball drills, off the wall, catching the other hand, so on and so forth. There's even a blocker sleeve out there as well. I like it. I would say so. I don't use it, but I like the
like
aspect of the product, right? So
like the
again, just that
Velcro one, or
yeah,
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 where the ball sticks to it. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. That came out back in 14, I want to say. I
Uh, I
think it
think
was
the concept
2014.
of it, I remember as a kid, we used to have those paddles with the
Yeah, the paddle with
Velcro
the
and
Velcro.
you would
Yeah,
just throw a ball
yeah.
and
No, we had
catch.
yeah. So that's yeah. I think that's actually I think where the initial
Yeah, they
concept
were
came. But we probably
neon green
we got
and
to get him
pink.
on. We got to get him on
Yeah,
the creator of that. Well, that would be good. But um, definitely working on your vision training is just as important as working on your on ice development,
yeah.
and so you have plenty of options out there for that.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I wish I could have known when I played that I know now is the importance of that cognitive training. And we have touched on it lots. We'll continue to touch on it. But a lot of what we do as goalies is so cerebral. Like our brains need to be functioning at, a high level for us to be successful, because if you think about, especially at the higher levels, how quickly shots come, especially with how good the technology is with sticks, how good the athletes are and how good they train, how good the development is now. Like, there are legitimate shooting coaches. When I
Mhm.
played, which wasn't even that long ago, but you know, we didn't have shooting coaches come out to our practices, even when I played juniors or stuff like that, right? So anything you guys can do that's training your brain, it's like any other, muscle in your body. The more you train it, the better it's going to be, the quicker it's going to process information. And stuff like your peripheral vision will be better, your reaction time will be better, how you process the game, your hockey IQ, that'll be better. So we'll link up in the show notes for this episode, which will be at the DIYgoalie.com/pod017, pod017, because crazy, we're already on episode 17. uh,
Wow.
but we'll put all that up. Visual Edge is one that a lot of our clients that have used it have given great feedback about it. The Synaptic goggles are really cool. They're the strobe goggles that make your brain process with less information. So the strobe kind of shuts off your vision for whatever time that you have the setting to. And honestly, your best place to start, probably, especially since it's a no cost option, is to start doing concentration grids. Do one daily. um, it's a free resource. You can head to concentrationgrids.com and it'll just randomly generate you a grid. You got to find the numbers in order of 0 to 99, but they're randomly spaced out in the grid, and it works on your eyes, it works on your focus. And if you do one a day, you'll see a big difference between the start of like a month and the end of a month as to how much quicker you get at it. And it's a great way to start, working on your vision and your cognitive processing, and just how you focus and how your brain works, all of that good stuff. Um, so again, we'll put all that up in the show notes. The other thing too, because we kind of started with a lot of the on ice stuff, so now we're kind of into what we can start doing off ice to maximize our development. Um, Kind of an obvious one, probably the thing that people think about the most when it comes to off ice stuff, is strength and flexibility. Um, we talked about it with Sharky in episode 2, I think it was, way back when, near the start of
You
when
don't
we
have
did
an
this.
order of the guests. You don't have that memorized.
Well, I still do. Ask me in like 50 more episodes. I'll probably I don't even remember who we talked to anymore.
Fair.
But yeah, the big thing though, and we mentioned it in that episode, is don't forget about the strength. A lot of the goalies focus solely on flexibility. And the problem is if you put your body into certain positions and certain situations where it's at its max when you're going for flexibility, if it doesn't have the strength to hold itself together, you're going to cause yourself injuries. And we're not looking for, as we're in the Olympics, we're not looking for Olympic weightlifting type, strength numbers. I mean, if that's what you want to do, all the power to you. But realistically, we need to find that balance, right? So not only are we being flexible, but we're working on that strength so that our joints can be where they need to be. Our explosiveness is there. Like, it helps us on the ice too, not just with our flexibility. But It just makes it so that you can get to your spots quicker when you're on the ice if you're strong, working on that strength. And then the flexibility again gives you that option to make those backdoor stretch saves with your toe. All of it together too just helps kind of your body have more longevity, and especially if you balance it properly. And that means balancing your muscle groups too. So don't just go for the washboard abs and the big biceps, right? Like, we got to also get the back muscles, the triceps, the hamstrings, the glutes, the quads, the adductors, all of that stuff we need to make sure that we're touching on, so that when you're out there you can be at your peak performance and do your best to avoid injury as well.
Uh, yeah, yeah,
Don't be like us, old and out of
yeah.
shape
No,
and
yeah. Lifting the planks of wood yesterday. Not a fun time.
yeah,
Um, yeah, no, it definitely like strength and flexibility is just as important as all the off ice training that we talked about and the on ice training that we talked about. But it's just a good habit and I shouldn't be talking about this, but this is just a good habit just to get into in general, right? Like every like it should be a goal or a goal that you want to be in best shape possible for whatever it is that you like to do, on the ice, off the ice, hiking, swimming, whatever that may look like there.
yeah.
But there's one thing that I've learned when I have gone to the gym, because again, like I wanted to go for like the washboard abs, big biceps, and all that. But the one thing that I've learned more so in particular is that like obviously all the different muscle groups do different things, and they apply to um, different aspects of what it is that you want to do. So it is a very good idea to work on the muscle groups that are more prominent when it comes to skating, playing goal, um, anything that would help you be more flexible in the net, and anything that would help with your strength. Particularly, a lot of it's going to be your leg muscles, realistically. But
I was
that's
gonna
the
say, instead of the washboard abs, go for the tree trunk legs. That'll be
yeah, exactly. Um, with that being said, as much as and we kind of talked about it in the a little bit in the cognitive training and kind of paralleled it in the on ice stuff. We want all the off ice um, stuff that we do. You would want to mimic in a way off ice, right? Very a lot of good resources out there. Slide boards being one. I have one back at my parents' place. You put the covers on top of your shoes, and then you're slide from one side of the slide, that the plastic slide board
yeah.
thing, to
You can
the.
get the covers for the pads too, so you can do it in
Oh,
like a
can you? Okay.
butterfly slide. Yeah, so
That's interesting.
you can do
I didn't.
like, yeah, you can do the standing slides back and forth, so it's almost working on your like your skating type muscles. But then yeah, you can get them for your pads too, so you can do
Okay.
like inside edge pushes back and forth.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
And then as well as just any type of off ice movement that would help with the anytime off ice movement sequences that involve explosiveness. There was one that I did back when I was at Vimy Ridge Academy in junior high school. Um, we started on our knees, kind of in like a butterfly position, and then in a similar way, you had to rotate the body where it is that you wanted to go, bring that leg up, and then explode to that next, kind of like a jump to that next position, land on your feet, and then drop almost immediately back down into your butterfly. That killed the legs, but that was a really really good one there, because essentially in a way that almost directly mimicked You make a butterfly save, you have to get to that next position, and instead of sliding across, you load the leg, turn, rotate, explode into that next position via T push, stop, set, drop back down for that next shot. That was a really good one that I liked. And then obviously a lot of off ice, hand eye drills. Um, we kind of talked about it already in the cognitive segment. Um, Ball drills, synaptic glasses, visual edge, all that, and even Sensorina is would be considered both cognitive and off ice training. It's just it's really nice just now that it's one of those tools that we have out there, and to be able to utilize it more effectively, and it almost directly mimics what we do on the ice and just basically translates it off the ice. um, really love that we have that, and again, like I talked about earlier, if you are able to grab at it, do it. But it is just another nice feature to have for mimicking your off ice components, because it goes into a lot more detail when it comes to it.
Yeah, so when it comes to doing anything off the ice, as best you guys can, if you can kind of replicate or mimic what we're trying to do on the ice, it can really help to translate a little bit more directly. We'll have Ariana come on too once things settle down a bit. I know I reached out to her and she said she'd come on, but she's one of our colleagues and she does just that. She's actually one of the instructors at Vimy Ridge, but she
Right.
works
Yeah.
a lot on doing the cognitive and the dry land training side of things. And what she'll do is she actually has a net and will work on basically like crease pattern dry land movements, to help with that explosiveness, to help work on stuff like rotations, the head and the eyes, all of that stuff. And she does a bunch of other stuff. So we'll have her on at one point to kind of go a little bit more in depth on that. But I think again, kind of like what we talked about with practices earlier, if you guys kind of have a plan, have a goal going into your off ice things too, your off ice components, and just think about how can I get the most out of this session? How can I translate what I need to work on the ice to off the ice? Because again, as we all know, ice time in general is hard to come by, and then goalie specific ice time is even harder to come by. So if you guys can take advantage of that off the ice too, that helps a lot. And building off of that too, that also applies to working on the mental side of things, working on the mental game, right? um, Pete Fry mentioned it in the episode we had him on, is that whatever percentage that it is that the mental game is part of our game, it's enough to make it worth practicing, make it worth working on, you know, again, with everything we do, when we're trying to get better, it comes with practice. It comes with, working on it consistently, having that routine. So whatever it is that you guys are doing when it comes to the mental game, again, have that plan, have that goal with whatever you're doing for that session, right? Work on the visualization, work on the positive self-talk, work on, the confidence like Pete Fry had us do, that kind of confidence drill or exercise, whatever you want to talk about. um, anything that can basically help you get into the right state of mind, right? And this doesn't even have to necessarily be a specific session. Like, you guys can try and implement it into your everyday stuff, right? Like, something happens at work, maybe something negatively happens at work. Use that time to try and figure out a way that you can bounce back from it so it doesn't affect you as much. So that when it comes to game time and something happens, you let in a bad goal, you kind of have had that real life experience as to how you can better deal with that. Right. And so that's kind of something, again, just to be thinking about. Having that plan, having that, you know, I guess plan of attack going into whether it is a controlled mental session or whether it's, you know, just everyday life, just trying to work on those skills. And that's really going to help translate to how you perform on the ice as well.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed that Pete Fry episode that we did. Um, there was a quote that I don't think Pete said it in our podcast, but I think I just saw it on TikTok or the Reels or YouTube Shorts. Was that the brain doesn't really understand the word "don't," and basically, like for example, like if I told you, you know, don't shoot at my knee, um, the brain doesn't necessarily recognize that. It hears the phrase "shoot at your knee," and so it's just the little things like that, and so it's um yeah, just that whole episode there. Highly recommend giving it a watch because there was a lot of great stuff from Pete on that. Again, the confidence exercise that he had us do, and just kind of how your like not everything needs to be a negative. Sometimes you can turn a negative into a positive. So it's up to you as an athlete. How do you want to um, how do you want to go about it? And it just popped in my head as we were talking about it is that I don't think we really have touched on it or anything, but all of what we're talking about here is just you got to take initiative and you got to take control on what it is that you want to do to get better. Um, you know, a lot of people do struggle with like, oh, I should go to the gym or oh I should eat healthier or whatever, but they don't exactly take the initiative to do that. It's the same thing it's the same thing for goaltending rather. If you are uh, absolutely dead set serious on wanting to be a better athlete, you need to put the time and work effort into it. Everything that we've talked about up to this point is important in order to be a better goaltender. Of course, you're going to have those days where you don't feel like doing anything, where you don't want to get up at 7, 8 in the morning to train and do your mandatory 15 minutes of ball drills or your mandatory 15 minutes of cognitive training or your 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes of mental training or even go to your hour and a half practice. You know, you are going to have days like that. But it's a more so a matter of how you push through it and taking the initiative as much as you don't want to do something, working at it in order to get better.
Yeah, and there's lots of things that you can do. Like it's going to be different for everybody, but I don't know. I think they say it what takes like 27 days or something of consistent repeated, you know, tasks or whatever it is to make it a habit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have to do something like set yourself a daily alarm, something like that, and just having that, like we kind of talked about it with Hiroki on the last episode, was just having that methodical approach to what you're doing and
Mm-hmm.
why you're doing it. And something that I think can help a lot of you guys, and this kind of ties into the mental side of things too, but journaling, like across all aspects of life, a lot of people find that some form of journaling can really help get in that right state of mind, but then it also gives you a bit of a point of reflection so that you can have some quote unquote data to go back on. How are you feeling? What did you do? Like, why did you feel that way? Is it because of what you did? And,
Right.
you know, you can start to identify patterns, but it also helps with that mindset shift too. Because, you know, as much as we are goalies, we love playing the game, we love playing the position. It's only a fraction of what we do. At the end of the day, we're still people, right? And as a person, being in that right frame of mind, getting that right mindset, um, that can be a big thing is as to overall just how we perform both on the ice and off the ice. And so if you
Mhm.
guys can kind of figure out something that works for you, especially like the gratitude journaling, I've like is something that works for a lot of people. You know, just having a phrase or something like that at the end of each day of something you're grateful for during that day, anything like that. Like, look into some of this stuff that can actually, you know, work for you, potentially can make a difference in your mindset and in how you approach things, and overall, and just how you kind of are, right? Like
Yeah.
how your emotions are, how you physically feel, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that really helps us leading into our next point, where we start to talk about just kind of some of the, um, I guess, for lack of a better term, more nerdy material when it comes to when it comes to working or development. We talked about it in a few episodes, and we talked about a little bit more with Dave Hutchinson with In Goal Magazine. Really surprised you managed to get him, by the way. Really jealous that I was not part of that. Um, but there are so many great articles and videos and whatever else on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, threads. There are so many great goaltending materials and resources out there, and it's always a good idea to learn from the pros that are out there, the pro development goalie coaches that are out there, future pro goaltending being one of them. Um, there's so many great resources, online resources out there for people to get at. Um, Pro reads, netminder apps, stop at you goaltending, podcasts such as ours, um, all again good resources to have. And it's just, if you love goaltending and you love learning about goaltending, that is the stuff to really pay attention to. The other thing as well, and it's honestly, it's just as simple as watching a hockey game, whether you actually go to the game, whether you are watching the NHL or AHL, ECHL, FPHL, or even any of overseas hockey,
In the
which I
HL.
yeah, or even European hockey, which I'd like to start watching more because I think it'd be interesting to see how those guys play over there. Um, but just even stuff like that, learning the game, watching the game, sorry, and just kind of seeing what other athletes do, because you start to pick up on little things. Like I mentioned in, I think it was the first episode that I came on, where we were talking about how it was starting to get easier for me to pinpoint how the Edmonton Oilers, for example, and how they set up their power play and who they are more than likely going to be going to next. Now, more than likely, a lot of times, at 9 times out of 10, they go to Draisaitl in his office below the circle. But you start to pick up on where the lanes are and what might be going through Evan Bouchard's head, who quarterbacks the power play, and kind of where he's looking to make that pass in order to set up tic tac toe in order for it to go in. You start to pick up on those little things, and when you see it from a broadcast perspective, you pick up on it and you start to take it back and start putting it into your own game. You can start to pick up on these little patterns and these little sequences, if you will, in order to and that starts to help you start becoming a better goaltender, because you're actually not physically, but you're actually learning the game, and you're learning how things are starting to develop and set up.
Yeah, I think the quote by Mitch Korn, I think, was something along the lines of hockey's a game of patterns. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we just need to start identifying the patterns. And especially as a goalie, there's like there's an infinite amount of possibilities pretty much of what can actually happen during a game and how things play out. However, there's really only a set amount of tools that we have in our toolbox that will apply to whatever situation that you're going to be thrown in, and being able to select the right tool when you're in that situation without really having to think about it, because a lot of times as goalies, once we start thinking, that's when we're in trouble. So,
Mm-hmm.
and Pete mentioned that, the subconscious mind. So when you're watching games, even if you're not necessarily like actively taking in that information, your subconscious mind is, and it's starting to recognize patterns. It's starting to recognize certain tendencies of what players like to do, how certain structures end up working, right? Like an umbrella power play works different than a box plus one and all of that stuff, right? And even though you might not actively pick up on that, your brain still processes that information, and it still uses that as a recollection for when it gets into a similar situation, whether you realize it or not. um, it's just, I guess, one of those things, like with everything we do, the more exposure you have to something, the better you understand it, the better you get at it. And also, the better you can identify what you need to be working on, what you need to develop. Because that's the big thing. And we've talked about it before, but being your own goalie coach, right? That's the best goalie coach out there for you. So if you can take the initiative to start really understanding and start really breaking down your own game and the game around you, that's when you can really start to take that next step and basically teach yourself, right? Because, you know, they say the real determining factor as to how good you understand something or how good you are at something is your ability to teach it, right? So if you can kind of teach yourself, um, you start to recognize that you actually have a good understanding of the position and of the game. And so that's actually a really good segue to the next point of what we can do to help our development is use video, right? If you can start watching yourself play and watch video of your team or the teams you play against, you start to again see these patterns. You start to develop a better understanding of what's going on. You develop a better understanding of what you need to work on and your strengths too, because you can play to your strengths. But that video is huge. Like we talked with Hiroki about, you know, being able to use stats effectively or use data effectively, right? And if you actually have that physical video data in front of you to be able to identify, oh, I noticed that I pushed too far over and that's why I got beat to the far side because I was off my angle. Or, oh, I was way too deep in my net and opened up that angle, or I was too far out and opened up the backdoor pass, or whatever it is. You can start to really see and understand and identify things that you really don't when you're just in the net, right? And it's kind of that like bird's eye view, that 100-foot view or whatever, that once you take yourself out of the equation and you're just watching, then you can really pick up on some stuff that you don't even notice. And it may take some time, and maybe for the first little bit you can get some help with it. Like that's something that we do offer is video breakdowns. But regardless of, if you have a goalie coach that can do it with you or something like that, to at least get the first couple out of the way to start getting a feel for how to do it, that really helps to identify what you need to work on, break down your game, and help you take that next step.
Yeah. Video is probably the number one tool that I think all goalies should be using. Um, you don't necessarily get an understanding of how you look in the net versus how you feel until you see yourself from basically a different perspective. So to all of the goalies that have told me to where to go and how to get there, when I tell them to do something, they're like, "Oh no, it's fine." It's like, well, when you go back and look at the video, it's like, "Oh, maybe coach actually knew what he was talking about." But beside my begrudgment beside me, um, yeah, just once you start to learn how to use video effectively, and again, pro reads at In Goal Magazine, listening to those guys talk and how they break down their game from the broadcast perspective, you learn so much, and you note it, and they notice things that I don't think a normal or standard goalie would actually pick up on. So it's always a good idea to. I mean, if I know there's a few beer league leagues that have like their broadcast system, and go back and watch those for all the parents who like to record their kids playing. Same deal. Just utilize video effectively, and uh, again, DIY Goalie offers it as well. True North, our parent company, all great, all such a great resource, and absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, and you know, worst case scenario, you get the GoPro and the suction cup, or the old iPhone and the suction cup on the
Yeah.
glass behind the net. But yeah, whatever it is, live barn, somebody videoing you, you doing it yourself, best you can, try and find a way. Um,
Yep.
we'll wrap things up here with one last kind of um, point is, at the end of the day, you got to also make sure that you're taking care of you, right? Like, you can't have a good performance on the ice if your body's not operating at the best that it can, right? And I know that's going to look
Mm-hmm.
different for everyone, and everyone's situation's different. You know, some guys are playing at 11 o'clock at night, and they're up at 6 a.m. the next morning for work, and they've got 3 kids and blah blah blah, and it's tough for sure. um but do your best. Take the rest that you need. Like, that's another thing that people don't emphasize enough. Yes, there's such a thing as too much rest, but you know, I don't know who said it. It's probably an old quote, but there's a quote that's along the lines of something like, well, if you don't take care of your body, where are you going to live? And that's one thing that I definitely didn't take seriously enough when I played, and I'm obviously paying for it now. I'm 29, and I mean, at 18 and 19, I tore a meniscus in each knee, had to get surgery on that. 25, I had a pretty major surgery on my one hip to move my
Oh, we were
pelvic
so
bone
close.
over because my joints all messed up. And just a few months ago at 29, I had my other hip done, just cleaned up and whatever. And a lot of that's because I didn't take care of my body as much as I should have when I played. Some of it's kind of genetic and whatever, but um, I can't reverse any of that that's happened. And so now I'm sitting here coaching and not playing anymore. And it is what it is, right? I mean, I still have a long ways to go, hopefully, so I can do what I can to take care of my body now. But that means, the strength and flexibility we talked about. That means eating right. That means hydrating. That means sleeping right. All of that stuff that needs to go into you performing and feeling good. You need to do what you can to take care of that body there.
Yeah. Um, yeah, my knees are not loving me nowadays. But it's incredibly important to be taking care of yourself. My dad, I think I mentioned this in one other episode. I know my dad was a really big proponent of that, because we every Monday and Thursday we also used to take karate lessons, and so it was always chicken and rice for dinner. That's what we always ended up having for dinner every Monday and Thursday, and I hated it because I wanted like craft dinner or like a burger or chicken wings or whatever, right? And so um, eat right, take care of yourself physically and mentally, and already you are 25% of the way there for succeeding, not only as an athlete but also just as a person in life in general.
Yeah, and that's like, if you want to check out our very first episode was with Michael Fouts and talked about nutrition and all of that good stuff. It's on my hit list too to get a sleep expert in and kind of talk about some of that stuff related to being an athlete and all of that. But yeah, there's plenty of resources out there for how to biohack or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the kids are calling it these days to help your body kind of hit the peak optimal performance that it can. And
Right.
even stuff like the Maria Mountain, the what is it, Goalie Training Pro, I think is her channel. She's got lots on the hip mobility and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, right, like you just can't perform if your body's not up to it. So, um, yeah,
Yeah.
do what you guys can. Um, we'll leave it there. Just as a bit of a wrap up, um, take advantage of every opportunity you guys get, and even if it's not hockey related, take the opportunity to go play pickleball or golf or whatever, do that cross training, take the opportunity to journal, even if it's not about hockey. Just any opportunity. Ian Gordon said it really well. Embrace the development, right? Like, see everything as an opportunity to get better. Don't make the excuses as best you can, right? I mean, yeah, there's going to be situations that aren't ideal. There's going to be wrenches that get thrown in to your plans, but at the end of the day, you can only control the controllables. Everything else is out of your hands, right? So do what you can to take advantage of every opportunity you get, both on and off the ice. That's going to really help, take those steps to development. Again, we'll put all the stuff we talked about in the show notes. We'll link it up, and we'll keep bringing you guys content that hopefully helps you kind of take those steps to get better. And again, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Um, Leave us a review. Let us know how things are going. The show notes will be at the DIYgoalie.com/POD017. And we'll catch you guys next week. Thanks again to Connor for hopping on and co-hosting with me today.
Oh, always a pleasure.
All right. We'll see you guys next Tuesday.